Hey y'all, welcome back to Right at the Wire. Well, we're going to take a look as part of our Belmont card series at the late pick 5 on Friday's card. So let's take a look. First leg of the late pick 5 is the 5th race, and it's a maiden special weight for 3-year-olds and up, and it's run on the inner turf at 1.25 miles. Number 1 is Sacred Rhyme. It's Chad Brown, Peter Brandt, and Manny Franco, good turf rider aboard. Very logical connections for a win. You see this one went at the Keeneland September sale for $310,000, so there's some expectations. Had a nice effort the first time. It's no sin losing to Program Trading, who just won an allowance race pretty impressively against a salty field, and was pretty much a runaway winner in that maiden race. So second start, this one's very likely to improve. A Kitten's Joy underneath and Mendelssohn up top. I think 1.25 miles will be fine. So I see no reason not to use this one. Logical win candidate. Wild Guess is kind of interesting. I thought showed a lot of pluck in the last race. Granted, it was on synthetic, but stayed up near the lead, which is never where you want to be on synthetic and at a route. And hung in there pretty well and kind of re-rallied to get third. So that was impressive to me. So I think you see 3 straight races of improved buyers. So I think that this one is definitely on the right track. The big question for me is the distance. Justifies have proven that the longer the distance is, the less effective they get. And this one would likely want to try to win this on the front end. And I think at 1.25 miles, that might be a fairly tall order. So some mixed signals here. If I was going to use, I would definitely want some value. Nostalgic One is trained by Todd Pletcher, and it's not often you see a Todd Pletcher get 10-1 in their first time start, but I think it was justified here. This one ran a very flat, dull race. Just didn't really do a whole lot of running at all. And you do get a long layoff, and that was at 2. Now you're getting a 3-year-old debut and first-time Lasix. But I think I want to wait one. I didn't see enough to get me excited to see there'd really be a big turnaround here. Headline News, conversely, I thought ran a pretty good race in the debut at Pimlico. Didn't really have any excuses, that's true, but for the first time start was put a decent move in the stretch, and it looked like more ground would be what the doctor ordered for this one. So I think with Jose Ortiz aboard, the second start's a pretty good place for Jimmy Toner. And you got Kerwin as a sire. I think this one's a logical use. Fluorescent Bay has been improving steadily with every start, but not going to be fast enough to win this race. You see, has been running at the state bred level and at maiden 40, and this is a big jump up and a big ask, I think, and so I'll pass. Swear is kind of interesting. Basically missed the whole 3-year-old campaign and debuted at 4 and had to check extremely hard at the early parts of that last race and came from the clouds to finish a pretty good second. So it showed some ability, and Grand Motion's really good with long layoffs, so that's not a surprise. He's also pretty good at second layouts. My big issue is that Broken Vow is not 1.25 miles sire. And that really is the thing that bothers me the most about this one. And you're not getting a whole lot of stamina with Cara Bell underneath. Not enough really to make a difference for me. I could see using this one, but I would definitely want to have a price. I think the second off the layoff here, there might be an improved effort. I'm really just not sure about the distance. That's my biggest concern. Fly Right will likely be the favorite in this race, or at least the second choice, and this is a solid bet against. Leah Giamatti is doing really well at this meet. She's 7 out of 11 in the money, and you do get Javier Castellano, but note that Manny Franco rode this one last time, and he jumped off. This one, I watched the last race at 2, and then the debut at 3 to see if there'd be any difference. And to be honest, there really wasn't any. This horse is very one-paced. Doesn't display a whole lot of kick in the stretch, just sort of goes open-reined all the way around the track at the same pace. Now you're asking this one to go at 1.25 miles. Astern was a turf sprinter, and he's 9% with turf roots. And it's not the greatest of signs that a mile and a quarter would be exactly what this one wants. But really, more than anything else, it's the running style that bothers me. I think they're going to put this one on the front end and try to wire it. And, you know, I think we'll look pretty good for a while, but I don't see this one hanging on late, being around. It's just the way this one runs. I think, particularly the Chad Brown will likely run a much better race, and so I'm just against this horse. I can't say it any other way. One Love Takes Over did not run a very good race last time, losing to Redistricting and Fly Right. Redistricting was a runaway winner and looked pretty darn good in doing so. You do see a little bit of back class at the maiden special weight level on dirt, and the move to turf did breed a pretty good effort in two back, but this one didn't build on it, didn't follow up, and granted, it was a pretty good race it ran against last time, but that to me was not something you want to see. Here's the other thing. More Spirit only ran at a mile and a quarter once in his career, and it was the Kentucky Derby, and he ran a dud. And they cut this one back to the Breeders' Cup Mile. So that tells me the distance is probably a bit of a limitation with this one. Escandarea to me was always more of like a mile and an eighth horse than a mile and a quarter. So take that for what you will, but I think I like others, and I just left a bad taste in my mouth seeing a regression like that in the last race. Race 6 is a claiming 35,000 claimer for 3-year-olds and up, run on the turf at 7 furlongs. Number 1 is Hereby, and ran a pretty good race last time. Got a career high buyer. Granted, it was on dirt, but it was a pretty decent effort. Was no match for Trelad. Excuse me, and you do see some back class there with a lot of italics. So this horse has been running against some pretty decent fields, albeit at lower claiming levels. So probably more a step aside in class than a step up. But you know, you can take for what you will. It just kind of looks to me like this one. I can't see enough here to get really excited about, especially moving back to turf with a barn that's so cold. REO is kind of interesting because you're coming back on an 8-day wheelback, and you see the first 2 efforts this year were pretty good, and at the 20,000 level got a decent 4th on the front end at a mile and a 16th, and followed it up at 35,000 with another really solid effort. In fact, probably a little better. And so now you're cutting back in distance for a horse who likes to run on the front end. And I think that could be just what the doctor ordered, 3rd off the layoff. So I don't normally like to bet horses that short, rest-wise, but I think in this case you got one in good form. Why not? So I think the area is a logical use. Penner Ash has some back class that some of those previous efforts, like at the 50,000 level, 2 back, or in October at Keenan at the N1X level, would probably win this race. The last wasn't the greatest effort, but if you look, that was a keen race, and Pioneering Spirit just won a really good allowance race at Belmont on Sunday, and Born Gambler came back to win as well. So that was a solid race, and I think this horse can offer better, and I think it's a logical use. Prince of Joy has been running at lower class levels for the majority, and really more than anything, the last 3 races have demonstrated declining form. Now, they're moving this one to turf and cutting back in distance, but you see this horse has an 0 for 2 record with a 46 buyer as a career high on turf, so there's just not enough here for me to get excited about, so I'll pass. True Believe there's some things to like. Coming off the layoff for the first time, ran a pretty good race. At 6 furlongs, was on the front end, couldn't quite hold it, and kind of has an MO at doing that, though. That's one thing. It's a little bit of it's disconcerting to me. You do see the 2 efforts prior to the layoff were on turf and demonstrated a career high buyer both times, so that's encouraging, and in this class. But it really, the fact that this one gives it up on the lead makes me a little reticent to get excited about But there are some things to like, and I can see using this one, but I'm just really bothered by that, giving it up on the front end. Our Country is pretty interesting to me. You get Flavian Pratt, and this one's coming second off the layoff. And granted, that was at a mile and a 16th the last time, but looked like the horse really needed a race. Just had that running style of, just kind of flattening out in the stretch, trying to make a move, but just not having it all there. But now you're getting, you've had a little more time, and I think this one's ready to run a good race. You do see some back class here at the end, at the optional claimer, 32,000 level, where this one has run some competitive races that would likely win this. And you go back to January 12th at Gulfstream at 7.5 furlongs, which is roughly a one-turn race, not quite. Ran a good second, so I don't think the cutback in distance is going to be an issue. And I think this one's poised to move forward. And with Flavian Pratt, why not? I think this one's a definite use. He's Got It didn't show a whole lot in the last race, but again, is another one that may have needed a race. The thing that's disconcerting is if you look back prior to that last effort in January, this one was running at the 7,500 level, and they had to drop this one a few times in order to get a win. So while this one's now 4 years old, didn't equal the career high coming off the layoff at a higher class than he normally runs at. I'm not encouraged that this one is going to run back to run a race that would be competitive here, so I'm going to pass. Science is another one coming off the layoff, and again, may have needed a race. But really, the thing was, more than anything, this one didn't run a lick in the last one. I mean, nothing. And lost to a marathoner who was a 26-1 shot. So I think that was probably had something to do with the fact so many of them were coming off layoffs and needed a race. If you look prior to the layoff at Aqueduct at the 35,000 level, this one ran a career high, and then went to the bench, which is a little bit of a concern. So you know that this one is class competitive and is capable of running a decent race. I'm not real excited about this one in this race, but I could definitely see using based upon the career higher. And prior to the layoff, this one was headed in the right direction, seemingly. So maybe you give this one a chance. We do have a main track only. Again, it's Lyndon Rice and Jose Ortiz, and that's enough for me. If this one does get moved to the dirt, this one's your win candidate right here without much argument. The third leg of the late pick 5 is the 7th race, and it's an optional claimant for 62,000, non-winners of 3 lifetime, 3-year-olds and up, running the dirt at a mile. And of course, at Belmont, we know that's a one-turn affair. Number 1 is Constitution Lawyer, and got his career high moving this one off the turf last time. It wasn't it was listed good, but if you didn't know otherwise, you would have sworn it was a fast track. I didn't see any puddles or any indications of moisture, so you'd have to consider that to be a pretty good effort. Coming third off the layoff for a hot barn, Ray Handel was really hot to start the meet, cooled off a little bit, and now he's hot again. So those are all positives. Dylan Davis won the first 3 races on Sunday at Belmont and had 4 for the day. So you got a hot jockey as well. So there's a lot of things to like here. I think you sort of have to use. Celestial Moon is trained by Bill Mott. You get Junior Alvarado aboard, and a couple of things that are encouraging is, number 1, to see a horse break their maiden and then win against winners next time out with a duplicate career high buyer, I think is a pretty good sign. You do notice the next couple, the form declined a little bit, so obviously something went wrong there. But I think it's fairly certain that Bill Mott will correct it, whatever's wrong. He's a great trainer. You get a nice, this one's coming up fresh, and Bill Mott is 31% and 63% in the money with a 46 to 90 day layoff in this spot. So I think likely this one will be just fine. Probably going to run on the front end. The only concern I would have is that at Belmont lately, front runners have not been doing terribly well. The dirt track seems to be more friendly to horses rating off the pace. So that's something to keep in mind. I can kind of go either way with this one because I think Celestial Moon will come back in pretty good form. But it's just I think the track isn't necessarily working in favor of right now. Guntown is a horse just claimed by Linda Rice from Steve Asserson for $50,000, and this one has been okay, but all the efforts have been around 2 turns prior, and it seemed to be more the bridesmaid than the bride most of the time. So the last one, they moved this one back to 1 turn. It ran a pretty good effort and got the career high buyer. So maybe 1 turn is what this one needs. You're getting a mile here and runs from off the pace, and that actually is a really good running style right now, as I mentioned. Linda Rice is first off the claim, 26%, 61% in the money with $1.61. ROI. My only concern is that this one maybe has a little too much to do because it does tend to run from far back, and but I think this one is a use. I just have a little bit of a question along those lines. Practical Coach is kind of interesting because this one's shipping in from Parks most recently, but has run quite a few different places. You look 3 back, this one ran a 1-turn mile at Aqueduct and got the career high buyer and a pretty good third to Bourbon Collie, who won next out. You see the next couple efforts after that, the form declined pretty well, and so a freshening certainly was in order, and this one's got one for about a month and a half. So probably will run a little better, and it seems like a 1-turn mile is more up this one's alley. I think that's why they shipped this one here. I can't see otherwise. And for shippers, Robert Reed is 29%, 57% in the money with a $2.51 ROI. So I think that's probably a pretty good sign. I'm still a little iffy with this one, but it seems like a 1-turn mile is probably right up this one's alley. And so maybe there's some things to like, but I would definitely demand some value if I was going to use this one. Double Crown, the red flag right away. This one's up for $62.5, and this one won the Kelso last year in October. So that's a fairly precipitous decline, in my opinion. If you look, following the Kelso, this one really didn't follow it up with a whole lot of really good efforts. Did have a second at Laurel at a mile in an ungraded stakes, but form has really not been there for quite some time. Now, they sent this one to turf last time and didn't factor at all, but I will say this for Lynn Cash. He has a 31%, 54% in the money, turf to dirt in this spot. This horse is battle tested, and, I mean, maybe that's the ticket. I don't know. But it's kind of iffy. I'm really more. It looks to me like he just wants to get rid of this horse. I don't know, but it's. I think that I would be very, very careful, and I'd want a hell of a good price if I was going to use this one for those reasons. Same thing with Outlier. This is another Lynn Cash, and up for $62.5, and you notice he's got Jaime Torres on both of them. So that's kind of funky right there, and maybe he's going to scratch one. I don't know. But this one looks like class is really the big issue. Hasn't run much to indicate that would be a factor against some of the saltier ones in here. And the fact that this one's up for a tag. If they both run, I could see them using this one as a rabbit for Double Crown. But aside from that, I don't see this one having much value in this race. Galt is trained by Belmont as well as the other one earlier, and you get Javier Castellano aboard. I think this one has plateaued. Is you see 4 straight races with steady improvement, but tapped out at a 90 in the last race, and that was the career high that he had run in the Louisiana Derby last year. He's been in this class for 3 straight races without a win, and it just seems to me like there's always somebody a little better. Tonal Impact is a nice horse. He's on a really nice winning streak right now. But it just seems like always somebody's better. And I like Celestial Moon, the other Belmont, better as having a little bit more potential. So I'd be very careful on using this one, and I'd like to have a little bit better value than likely you're to get with a Belmont training. Race 8 is an N1X allowance for non-winners of 2 lifetime for 3-year-olds and up, fillies and mares, and it's running the inner turf at 1.25 miles. Number 1 is Anatolian, and they had a nice effort the last time at 1 mile and 3/8, second off the layoff, and got the career high, so those are all positives. Had some really nice kick in the stretch, so obviously distance isn't going to be an issue. Mike Maker trains, and I think this one's heading in the right direction. This is Mike Maker's wheelhouse. This is what he does, is stretch horses out on turf. And you're getting Manny Franco aboard, who's a nice turf rider. All systems go, definite use. Highland Grace is facing winners for the first time, but if you look, you see those 5 efforts at the maiden level. You see improvement every single time, and placing better every single time. And look at the back class here. You got Well Into, Haystacks, Mademoiselle Jackie, all came back to win. Well Into's been run at the stakes level. Soviet Excess has as well. Prerequisite. I mean, those are salty fields. So and she hung with all of them. So I think those are all good signs that facing winners for the first time isn't going to be a big deal. In particular, for Barkley Tag, third off the layoff, he's 1 for 3, but he's 100% in the money in this spot. And obviously the distance isn't going to be an issue. You get Flavian Pratt aboard. I think this is an obvious use. Mariah's Fortune is kind of interesting. Now, Patrick Reynolds is 0 for the meet, but this one the last time ran a career high buyer for the second outing on turf, and more than anything else, I like the grit. This one graded off the pace all the way around the track, and was starting to fade, but then re-rallied to get third. So I thought showed a lot of grit. Now, granted, it was at the 32,000 claiming level, but I think that showed some determination. So this one's got a little bit of fight. I think the distance isn't going to be a problem. Classic Empire, and you got Giants Causeway underneath. Winning it on the front end against this group might be a bit of a tall order. I think that's what they'll likely try to do. So, I mean, I can, there is some other speed in here that I think that might make it tough for this one to wire the field. But anyway, I thought this one had some grit. And if you're going to use, certainly demanded price, it does have 4 wins lifetime, which is more than most of these. So it does know how to win. Peg's AK Girl. You got Reuben Silvera, who's made a nice transition to Belmont coming up from Philly, and he's been doing really well, so that's a positive. This is a bit of a class test moving up from the starter allowance, but the last race was won on the wire to wire, and this one's pretty handy, can rate as well. So coming from off the pace in this race might be a little better thing to do. You are getting third off the layoff as well. But it is a bit of a class test, and that's really the issue for me more than anything else. I just think maybe the class is a little high here. But anyway, I think this one's in pretty good form. If you could get a decent price, this is maybe one you want to think about using. Sister Bridget, declining form 3 straight, and really precipitous decline. Lost by 31 last time. That's enough for me. I don't see, the tab is kind of promising, probably will run a little better effort, but I just can't back a horse with that kind of record. Rambeek is kind of interesting. Bobby Roberto is 0 for Belmont, he's 0 for the year, in fact, and long layoffs aren't really the thing that he does, but if you look back, you'll see this one has run at commensurate distances to pretty good effect, 3/16 and at 1 mile and 3/8. You go back, this one has run some pretty good races that I think would be competitive here, and it seems like the distance is something that this one will relish. So I think we could draw a line through that last one because it was on dirt. It is a bit of a tall order to start off a layoff at 1.25 miles, but I think it's a distance that's pretty well suited for this one. So if you do like with the freshening, I couldn't blame you. And but I want a little bit of value because of the long layoff. Out of Sight is trained by David Donk, and this one's third off the layoff, which isn't a really positive angle. The best work this one's done has been against state breds, so this is a bit of a class jump. You do see the last race was in a ungraded stakes for state breds at 1 mile, and didn't demonstrate a whole lot. So I think if you look and see those two N1X efforts were not very promising when this one moved to open company. So now you've got the added distance involved. I think I'll pass. Lay the groundwork. Really the big issue right off the bat is the pedigree. SpyTown and Caleb's Posse, that's double sprint. And SpyTown can occasionally get a horse that can go 1.25 miles, but they need some stamina underneath from the dam, and you're not really getting it here. So that's a bit of an issue to me. The barn is Mark Hennig's kind of cold. You are getting Dylan Davis, who, again, as we noted, it had 4 wins on Sunday, so he's pretty hot. But I can't quite figure out why this horse is in this race, to be honest with you. It just seems so contrary to what this horse would want to do. You do see some prior efforts at 1 1/16 or 1 1/8, but it's a big difference between that and 1.25 miles. And I just can't back a horse with this type of pedigree going at 1.25 miles. Lullaby Land was ran that same race as Anatolian last time and made a really big middle move. It was highly unexpected. And I kind of liked it at the time. I thought it made a lot of sense, but this one just couldn't build on it and flattened down the stretch. Had to do a lot of running at the turn and the top of the stretch, and consequently flattened out. My biggest concern with this one is that may have taken something out of this one, because that was a really big effort. And so I think a regression might be in order. I mean, that was equaling the career high buyer. And if you look back the last time this horse did that was at the 16,000 level at Tampa, and then regressed after it. And you see then following that at 73, another regression. Also, the other thing is that it looks like the beginning of a new form cycle. You see 3 starts with increased buyers with every one. So I think this one's starting a new form cycle. So that makes me kind of reluctant to use. Probably under if you do like this one more than anything else. We do have a main track only. And it's Linda Rice and it's Busted Bay. This horse loves 1 turn. If they run this back on the dirt at 1 turn, I'd go for it all the way. This horse is in excellent form. Makes perfect sense if this one went to dirt. Last leg of the late pick 5 is the 9th race, and it's a maiden claimer for 75,000, 3-year-olds and up, fillies and mares, and it's run on the turf at 1 1/16. And if we look at the configuration, you'll note this one is run out of a chute, so it's more of a turn and a half as opposed to 2 turns. Horses on the inside have a little bit of advantage getting position. Number 1 is Don't Tell Amy, and like a lot of horses in this race, this would require a leap of faith. Tom Morley is a really good trainer, and you get Javier Castellano aboard, but you see in the debut it got a 53 buyer on dirt at 7 furlongs, but then the form just fell right off a cliff afterwards, culminating with a 41 length loss in February. So they obviously went back to the drawing board with this one, and I guess they're now going to try turf. Twirling Candy's an okay first-time turf sire, but you know, you don't want. It's hard to back a horse who's doing a lot of things for the first time in a race, and I probably would want to wait one. But you know, if you believe in Tom Morley, and you can go for it. It's not an overpowering angle for him. Diamond Status is 0 for 13, and that immediately means pass for me. Just to go over, I mean, you see this one did get a second in the last race at maiden 75 level, but take a look. They've dropped this horse a couple of times before, and it hasn't worked out. I don't think this horse knows how to win. That's the bottom line, and I'm just not willing to back a horse who's had 13 bites of the apple with no win. Wixy Pixie is kind of interesting, and when you consider this one is coming back on a 6-day layoff, David Donk is 2 for 3 with a $5.03 ROI with a 7-day wheelback. So that immediately tells me we have to think about this one. Now, this one also hasn't gone on turf before, and the sire is Good Magic, who's you know, okay, and the dam, I think it's her first, so it's okay. David Donk is normally 5% with second timers. So again, this is one that's a leap of faith if you want to take it. I could see it. I mean, it ran an okay race, nothing to get overly excited about last time. Again, if you want to believe in the wheelback and the angle there, I mean, I think maybe this is one to consider. It's awful hard to find a really bona fide win candidate in this race, to be honest. Financial Advice is trained by Chad Brown and Klarovich Stables. You know, those are normally A connections, and when you see a turf race with them in it, you get excited. Except when it's at the maiden claiming level, and you see this one, they just dropped this one out of the maiden. Excuse me. The last race was okay, and nothing more than that. It was a good race. You had Prerequisite and Highland Grace both came back to win, so it was a key race. But this horse didn't factor in the race at all. Just kind of ran around the track. And I think that's why they moved this one now to the $75,000 level. If you consider they paid a $170,000 stud fee to breed this one, they're willing to take a bit of a bath, I think you could say. Is it logical that this horse with the class drop can win? Of course. It's Chad Brown, second off the layoff, likely to improve. I just wasn't really excited about this horse, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets beat or he's dressed up to be claimed. But do you have to use? Yeah, it's Chad Brown. You can't not use. Can't Keep Me Down is trained by Mike Maker, and you get Manny Franco aboard. And you see after this one took over for Ty Pletcher, you see some market improvement. This is what Mike Maker does. He stretches horses out on turf. This one was okay on the front end last time, giving it up late. But I think that was good progress. And I think better is logical to be expected here, given the connections. And I think you should absolutely use. Meow Meow Hiss did not build off the first effort at the maiden level, and that's always a problem. Ran in that same race with the others against Prerequisite and Highland Grace, but didn't run a lick in that race at all. I mean, no running. Was at the back the whole way. Just wasn't. Didn't show anything in the way of promise. Consequently, I'm not real excited about betting this one back, even with the addition of blinkers. I want to wait one and let it prove it to me. Katie's Check Ride is by Street Sense, and she's going on the turf for the first time, and he's 14% first-time turf. So maybe we can draw a line through the debut effort since it was on dirt. You are getting a bit of a layoff, and you get Jimmy Bond as a trainer. I would rather see this one at Saratoga with Jimmy Bond than at Belmont, but he may be prepping this one for later. We don't know. You're adding blinkers, and so you got first-time turf, first-time blinkers, and you got Jaime Torres aboard, who's a pretty lousy turf jockey. Hopefully he'll learn someday, but I've watched him just ride poorly on turf too many times to back any horse that he's on. So for that reason, I'm going to pass. Freedom for All is one of the few in here who actually has some positives. This one is a classic Kenny McPeak. You see getting a little bit better every single start. And now moving to turf. The American Freedom is not the greatest of turf sires, but this horse is improving steadily. And Kenny McPeak's 1 for 2 at the meet, so and you get Dylan Davis again, who's been pretty hot lately. So there are some things to like. Maiden special weight to maiden claiming is a good angle for Kenny McPeak as well. I think you probably want to use. Whiskey Lullaby is very logical in this spot. Michelle Nevin started the meet really hot and then cooled off, but still she's doing okay. This one is coming off a fairly long layoff, but you do know prior to that, we'll draw a line through that race that came off the turf, but prior to that was running on the front end, and at the maiden special weight level and was factoring pretty well and stayed in the money. I would consider in this race this would be a very logical horse, a very logical chance to debuting at 4 to run a good race and to wire this field. So I think you sort of have to use. We do have another main track only, and it's another Linda Rice with Jose Ortiz. You know, need I say more? If this one goes to the dirt, I think this is one you logically have to use. So here's what our ticket looks like, and there's a lot of different ways to go on this Pick 5, to be sure. In the 5th, we're going to use 1-4. We're going to try to beat Fly Right. I think it's very possible, based upon the reasons stated. In the 6th, we're going to use 2, 3, and 6. In the 7th, we're going to use 1, 2, and 3. In the 8th, we're going to use 1 and 2. And in the 9th, we're going to spread with 4, 5, 8, and 9. So 2 times 3 is 6, times 3 is 18, times 2 is 36, times 4 is 144. It's a $72 ticket on a 50-cent base. And we'll see what we'll see.
Well, I hope our analysis will help you in your wagers, and I wish you the best of luck in that regard. We've got Stephen Foster Stakes Weekend coming up, normally from Churchill, but this year it'll be from Ellis Park. So there should be some interesting twists and turns along those lines, and we'll have full coverage for you later this week. We've got 2 weeks to go till Saratoga. I can't wait. I hope you can't wait either. We're going to be there for all of it. We'll have extensive coverage, more on that later. And of course, if you do like what you see here, please like and subscribe. We do thank you for coming by, and we'll be talking to you in the very near future. And until then, be well.